Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Millie and I'm recovering from an eating disorder, and today is a long awaited video about exercise and eating disorders / eating disorder recovery. I feel like I've been hinting at this video for months now, but guys, it's taken such a long time to research this topic, put it all together into a video, script it, and now finally sit down and record it. Without further ado, let's get into it. So exercise is defined as any movement that exerts the muscles of the body. So this could be literally anything from dancing, walking, high intensity workouts, weightlifting, gardening, and more broadly, the term movement encompasses structured exercise like those things that we just mentioned, as well as incidental movement like walking to the corner shop or doing the hoovering or the washing up. Both of these types of movement or exercise are important for us to consider in the video today, and both are important to keep in mind when assessing activity levels. Often that incidental activity is really overlooked, but it can be compulsive and it can be harmful, just like structured exercise. So when exactly does activity become compulsive? Well, it's not really until the last few years that researchers have looked at this in a bit of detail. Currently, compulsive exercise is defined as driven, rigid urges to move combined with a perceived inability to stop despite the potential risk for harm. Bit of a mouthful. So a few criteria have also been determined to assess and further define compulsive activity or compulsive exercise. 1, it must be driven and rigid. It feels like you're almost compelled to perform the movement, and it's really difficult to control. Perhaps it feels like you couldn't stop even if you wanted to. Changing or interrupting this movement routine would often lead to a great amount of distress. 2, it's performed to excess. Whether an activity is excessive or not really depends on a few things like age, gender, food intake, and BMI. 3, the movement is being performed to avoid negative consequences of not doing the movement. Okay, a bit of a mouthful. Basically, this just means that there are concerns about perceived negative consequences if you reduce or stop the activity. So this might be things like, I will gain weight if I don't do this activity. If I stop movement, my muscles will turn into fat. These fears lead to feelings of guilt, depression, irritability if an activity is missed or interrupted. And 4, there is negative impact on the person's life, and the activity is continued even when it's not being enjoyed. Movement now feels like a chore rather than something that you enjoy. Just a quick nod as well to what Tabitha Farrar calls lower level movement. I think it's really important to highlight that, as I said at the start, exercise isn't just HIIT workouts and weightlifting and that structured exercise that you might be thinking of. It's also cleaning the kitchen, walking the dog, taking the bins out, hoovering. These routine activities can also become compulsive. Compulsive exercise has been a core part of eating disorder presentations since the first few documented cases. In very classical descriptions of anorexia, a girl wrote, I'm going to read this from my script, as part of the pathological history, it is curious to note the persistent wish to be on the move, though the emaciation was so great and the nutritive functions at an extreme ebb. Basically, years and years ago, we still saw this drive for compulsive exercise, and the estimated prevalence of compulsive eating. The estimated prevalence of compulsive exercise ranges from 31.9% to 80% of adults with eating disorders. And whilst this is quite a large range, one thing's for sure, we can agree, it's quite common. But why? We can link this drive for movement back to the adaptively famine hypothesis that I've spoken an awful lot about on my channel. It is believed that this compulsive urge to be on the move and to be active has roots in evolution. For example, when the body believes that resources are scarce or that we're in a famine through a period of dietary restriction, it urges us to relocate in order to find a reliable, abundant food source. Much like birds or other animals migrate in search of reliable food sources. The relationship between exercise and an eating disorder is very individual, whether exercise was always to control weight or it started out as something enjoyable. Either way, movement can be a core maintenance factor for eating disorder symptoms. Even if it started out with good intentions, exercise can become a harmful compensatory mechanism or a way to control body weight. In fact, research has shown associations between physical activity and the trajectory of an eating disorder. It's been associated with lower quality of life, longer inpatient stays, greater suicidal ideation, and increased risk of relapse. Okay, listen, I'm not going to give you a lecture on the risks of exercising, as I'm sure you would probably just click off the video or skip straight past that. But it is important to be aware and be conscious of the dangers of exercising when you're malnourished, and you don't need to be underweight to be malnourished. When malnourished, it's likely that there's been a reduction in muscle mass, so there's less support around your joints and your tendons. Exercise on top of this can be hugely dangerous. It also means that your muscles cannot withstand repetitive movements in exercise. You're more vulnerable to repetitive strain injuries. You might notice things like back pain, bruising, and increased stress fractures. Osteoporosis is another common complication that I'm sure you're all aware of. Osteoporosis occurs when there is a loss of bone mineral density, and it increases the risk of fractures, even at low intensity exercise like walking. Overall, any kind of exercise works to build up your muscles by breaking them down and then rebuilding them stronger. But in order to repair the muscles stronger, there needs to be sufficient rest and sufficient nutrition. Within the confines of an eating disorder, it's highly unlikely that those needs are being met. Often people tell me, if I do more exercise, I'll be fitter. Or the more exercise I do, the more weight I'll lose. However, there is only so much the body can take before it collapses. More is not always better. Do any of these points sound like you? I make myself exercise even when I'm injured or tired. I exercise every day and I feel guilty if I miss a day. I must always do more than I did last time. I make excuses to miss social events in order to exercise. I exercise to allow myself to eat. I must exercise to compensate for what I've eaten. I need to exercise in order to cope with the way that I feel. I make up for any exercise that I've missed by doing more next time. I do not enjoy exercise the way that I used to. If any of those sound like you, it might be time to reflect on your relationship between movement, your body, and your eating disorder. I know that if I just tell you to stop movement, you'll laugh at me. It's simply not that easy. It doesn't always feel like a choice. It's compulsive, right? It's in the name. But it is important to acknowledge that this urge to be active becomes less intense with weight restoration. In treatment centres, however, exercise is often dismissed and not considered a factor in recovery, despite the extreme prevalence of compulsive exercise and eating disorders. The recommendations around this are murky to say the least. Exercise is not even brought up by some professionals during recovery. This is not something that should be a grey area. There are such harmful physical consequences for exercising when malnourished. We need to be clear on this. And listen, I know exercise has its benefits, both physically and mentally. It improves our cardiovascular health. It improves our skeletal strength. It improves our self-esteem, and it's a natural mood booster. I literally present a course on this at my job. And perhaps this is why health providers are so hesitant to encourage complete and utter rest during recovery. However, as we said earlier, movement can play such a huge role in maintaining eating disorder symptoms that rest truly is best. From mine and others' experience, going cold turkey on exercise for a period of time is the best way to give your body the break that it needs. It needs time to heal, physically and mentally. Your body needs time to repair physical damage, and your mind needs time to break harmful beliefs around exercise and your body. In the start, this might feel dreadful. It likely will feel dreadful. You may feel restless, on edge, perhaps not sure what to fill the time with, or perhaps there's a sense of relief from letting go of those rituals. If you're really struggling to dive headfirst into rest, here are some tips. Start with an activity diary. Record what you're doing, how often and how much. Record how you feel after each movement, and work out the pros and cons of change versus the pros and cons of staying the same. What are you concerned about if you stop movement? This helps us to really visualize change, which is necessary to move forwards. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And I'll leave some good resources for the pros and cons of change down below, because I think this is a worthwhile activity to do at any point in recovery. It's really helpful, at least at the very start of recovery, when you're like dipping your toes in the water. Helps you weigh up the pros and cons of recovery versus the pros and cons of staying with your eating disorder. I definitely would take 15 minutes just to do that regardless. Perhaps rather than going cold turkey, you might want to consider cutting down gradually. So just reducing by 1 exercise a week, or by 5 minutes, or bringing the intensity down a bit. If you've got that real restless feeling when you're kind of sitting doing sedentary things, but your mind is kind of going, oh, I need to be moving, use distractions, books, arts and crafts, podcasts, YouTube videos, breathing techniques. And like with all things, with time, it passes. At this point, it may also be helpful to identify any lower level movement compulsions that you have as well. These also need to be challenged during the process. This might be things like cleaning the whole kitchen before you sit down to eat breakfast, standing when having conversations that you could have while sitting, and fidgeting or tensing your muscles even when you're sat down. In order to challenge these lower level movement compulsions, I challenge you to sit with stillness. Sit through the stillness. Allow stillness. It's difficult at first, but with time it gets better. Just because your mind is telling you to do something doesn't mean that you have to do it. You still have control over your actions. It may feel like you really have to do this thing. Your mind is screaming at you, but at the end of the day, it's you in control of your body. So how do you know when it's the right time to go back to movement? To be honest, the moment you stop thinking about going back to exercise is the moment you're ready. When you stop obsessing over it and thinking about it endlessly, you'll know you're ready. Of course, it's really important to be nutritionally rehabilitated and weight restored by this point, but I found that the moment that I stopped obsessing over when I could get back to exercise had my relationship begun to heal. Try returning with a blank slate. Wipe clean all of your previous beliefs around movement. There is no should or have to. There's no rules to follow. Find a new motivation. Movement should be joyful, and it's something that you should want to do. So what is your goal now with going back to movement? Is it to feel good? Is it to boost your mood? Because like we said, it is a natural endorphin release. Being honest and accountable with yourself on why you want to exercise will help to know whether you're mentally prepared to go back to it or not. You will need to pay extreme attention to how your body responds to increased activity. It may ask for more food. It may ask for more fluids. It may ask for more rest, and you need to allow that. You need to fuel this movement. You need to allow for sufficient rest. And you have to really learn to retrust your body and listen to the cues that it's sending you. If you're trying movement in a few different ways, you're trying out different new things, find a movement that makes you feel energized. You do not need to force yourself through HIIT workouts if you truly love a slow and gentle yoga session. If you have weight restored whilst exercising, I just want to kind of tackle that feeling, because you may have weight restored, but you wouldn't be truly recovered. Because yes, you can weight restore whilst exercising if you eat enough food, but did you truly work on the mental half of recovery? Full recovery isn't just gaining weight, but it's challenging all of the rules and conditions that your eating disorder has put on you. There is a ton of mental work that needs to happen behind the scenes. So if you haven't challenged your beliefs about exercise or given yourself time to repair that relationship, and if you still feel that you need to exercise in order to be able to eat, you are not recovered. If movement feels compulsive, you are not recovered. And I want to talk you through my story or my experience with exercise, from using it to control my weight to obsessive workouts, to quitting cold turkey, and now reintroducing it again. I always hated exercise at school. I would do anything to get out of PE lessons. I never, ever was the athletic type. Perhaps because I have no hand-eye coordination, I could never catch a ball, I could never hit a ball, I was useless. When I first developed eating disorder tendencies in my early teens, exercise became part of my life for the first time. From walking on the treadmill during lunch hour to secret late night workouts, I looked for any chance to burn calories through exercise. And for years, that was my thoughts around exercise. Not enjoyable, not something I wanted to do, not something I looked forward to, a punishment for not having the ideal body, a punishment for eating too much or the wrong thing. And while the amount of exercise I did fluctuated as I lapsed in and out of disordered eating, it was something I always went back to as a way to manage my weight. Never, ever was it something I wanted to do. When I experienced a much larger relapse in 2020 to 2021, exercise started to take over my life. It started with Chloe Ting. We all know her. From there, it was daily HIIT, couch to 5k, 10,000 steps a day. I was obsessed with my steps. I did not walk for enjoyment. I walked the same route every single day, simply to burn calories, and I hated it. In January 2021, I restarted the Couch to 5k program. If you don't know what that is, it's basically an introduction to running. I think it's a 9-week program, 3 runs a week, and you go from basically not running at all to running for 30 minutes non-stop. I hated it. I dreaded every single run for perhaps the first 7 weeks. Week 7 of the program, I've settled into these slightly longer runs at a consistent pace for about 20 to 28 minutes, and I began to like them. They helped me so much with my depression, with my anxiety. I could work out problems in my mind on a run and not get distracted. I could listen to brilliant podcasts, and I loved it. And sometimes, when listening to a particularly good song, I have been known to belt along out loud and dance like crazy. Yeah, in public, along main roads, you'd see me dancing along. Yep, I got honked at so many times. I didn't care. I loved it. I was enjoying it so much. And for a moment, I was so proud of my body and for what I'd achieved. Around this time though, my eating disorder was getting worse and I could no longer sustain those longer runs. I injured my IT band on one leg and my patella on the other, and I had to stop running, and I was miserable. And after a month or so, I was able to do just a little bit, maybe a few kilometers here and there, very short distances. But during that rest time, my anorexia had spiraled so much that exercise was so unsustainable and so dangerous. I don't want to be triggering here, but basically I had a bit of an incident and I had to call for help, and that was the day I stopped running. It was one of a few rock bottoms for me. I knew from that night that I couldn't run anymore. It was too dangerous. And this was one of my motivations to recover, so that I could regain that energy to run and run for longer, run for further, because I loved it. I knew that I had to recover in order to give myself the fuel I needed to run as much as I was. I stopped running for 1.5 years. I didn't expect it to take that long, but that's the time I needed to firstly weight restore and secondly do the mental work I needed to go back with a healthy mindset. And in October of 2022, I restarted the Couch to 5k program. And I think following a very structured beginner's program like that really helped me, rather than just trying to jump back in where I'd left off. If you're worried about losing your fitness level by taking this time out to rest, I hear you. I was so terrified that I would never ever run as fast as I had again, that I'd never hit a new PR. I was so wrong. I hit personal best after personal best. My first 5k back was the fastest I've ever ran. And since then, I've broken that record 2 more times. And guess what? I love it. I love it. I could talk for hours about running. I look forward to every run. But if there was ever any doubt in my mind about the intentions of movement, I know I would just take a step back and go back to rest until I could be sure that I was engaging with a healthy mindset. Where am I at right now? Well, I got my lovely Garmin watch for my birthday recently, and I've been using that to train back up towards a 10k again. I think I'm on about week 6 of a 14-week program now, and I run 3 times a week. I am someone who, when I was younger, could never see myself exercising for fun. I thought I would always use it to manage my weight or to punish myself. I never, ever thought I would have the relationship with exercise that I have today. You can heal your relationship with exercise. You can find joy in being active. But I just want to note finally that this is not me saying you need to exercise to be healthy. I do think exercise has tons of benefits for physical and mental health, but if you don't enjoy it, that's okay. You don't have to ever go back or start working out. But if you want to and you put in the work, this is me telling you that you can. It's possible. I believe in you. Hopefully you found this video somewhat insightful. If not, perhaps inspiring. If not, sorry I put you through it. I'll leave all of my references down below. I really put my master's student hat on for this one and I read so many papers. If you're interested, I'll leave them all down below as well. If there's another topic that you want me to do a bit of a deep dive into, leave a comment down below because I'm not sure what to do next. I'm thinking mental hunger, but let me know if there's something else you'd like me to do a deep dive into. And as always, all my love, and I'll see you next time.